The rain-slicked pavement gleamed under the flickering streetlight, and I was running. Heart pounding, sneakers slapping against asphalt, my breath a jagged rhythm in the Seattle night. Behind me, the wail of sirens shredded the quiet, chasing me like a predator. I wasn't supposed to be here, not in this alley, not with blood on my knuckles and a stolen wallet burning a hole in my pocket. My name's Ezra Kane, 24, and I've been scraping by on the edges of the city for years. Odd jobs, late-night hustles, anything to keep the lights on in my rundown apartment. Tonight I'd crossed a line. The guy I'd swiped the wallet from hadn't taken kindly to it, and the fight that followed left him sprawled on the ground, groaning. I didn't mean to hurt him, but panic doesn't care about intentions. I ducked behind a dumpster, chest heaving, as the red and blue lights painted the walls. A cop's voice barked through the dark, sharp and commanding. "Come out, kid. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I froze, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. I was no stranger to trouble, but this was bad. "Hands where I can see 'em, pretty boy," the cop said when I finally stepped out, my palms raised. His voice was low, almost amused, and it threw me off. In the dim light, I caught his face, broad jaw, piercing blue eyes, maybe late 20s. His badge read C. Harper. He didn't look like the cops I'd dealt with before, the ones who'd slam you against a wall first and ask questions later. This guy was different, like he was sizing me up not just as a thief, but as something else entirely. "Ezra Kane," I muttered, expecting cuffs and a one-way ticket to a holding cell. Instead, Officer Caleb Harper tilted his head, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. "You don't look like you belong here," he said, his tone softer now. "Why'd you do it?" "Here's the deal," he said, stepping closer, his voice steady but firm. "I can arrest you right now, and you'll spend the night in a cell. Or you can come with me, help me sort this out, and maybe you walk away." It wasn't a question. It was a choice, one that felt bigger than the moment. I didn't trust cops. Never had. But something about Caleb Harper, his calm, the way he didn't rush to judgment, made me nod. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above the rain. "What do you want me to do?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured toward his cruiser, parked at the alley's mouth. "Get in. We're going for a drive." The ride was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your skin. Seattle's neon lights blurred past, reflecting on the wet windshield. Caleb didn't say much, just drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on his thigh. I kept waiting for the trap, for him to pull into the station and book me. But he didn't. He took me to a diner instead, a 24-hour joint called Rosie's, all chrome and flickering fluorescence. "Sit," he said, pointing to a booth. I slid in, wary, as he ordered 2 coffees and a plate of fries. "You're not under arrest," he said, leaning back, his eyes scanning me. "Not yet. But I need to know who you are, Ezra. Why you're out here throwing punches and stealing wallets." I stared at the table, the weight of his gaze heavy. "What's it to you?" I snapped, but my voice cracked, betraying me. I was tired of running, tired of scraping by, tired of being invisible. And maybe, just maybe, I was tired of lying to myself about who I was. Caleb leaned forward, his voice low. "I've seen kids like you before. You're not a bad guy, just lost. But you keep going like this, you're gonna end up somewhere you can't come back from." His words hit like a punch I didn't see coming. I wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't know me, but the truth was he wasn't wrong. The fries arrived, and he pushed the plate toward me. "Eat," he said, Then talk. I didn't want to trust him, but my stomach growled, and I grabbed a fry. As I chewed, I started talking, haltingly at first, then faster. I told him about the foster homes, the hunger that gnawed at me when I was a kid, the way I'd learned to survive by taking what I needed. I didn't tell him everything, though. Not about the nights I'd spent wondering why I felt different, why I'd never been able to look at guys the way my friends did with girls. That was a secret I kept buried deep. Caleb listened, not interrupting, just nodding now and then. When I finished, he didn't judge. He didn't lecture. Instead, he said, "You're better than this, Ezra. You just don't know it yet." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You sound like a damn motivational poster." He smirked, but his eyes were serious. "Maybe, but I'm not wrong." The rest of the night was a blur. He drove me back to my apartment, no cuffs, no charges. "Stay out of trouble, pretty boy," he said as I climbed out of the cruiser. "I don't want to see you in that alley again." His voice was firm, but there was something else in it, something that made my chest tighten. I watched him drive away, the rain swallowing his taillights. I didn't know it then, but that night was the start of something bigger, something that would crack open the walls I'd built around myself and force me to face who I really was. The next week, I couldn't shake Caleb Harper from my head. His voice, that steady calm, kept echoing, calling me pretty boy, like it was a challenge and a promise all at once. I told myself it was nothing, just a cop doing his job, maybe feeling sorry for me. But every time I passed Rosie's diner, my heart did a stupid flip. I tried to stay clean. No more pickpocketing, no more late-night hustles. But Seattle's a hard city when you're broke, and my fridge was down to a half-empty ketchup bottle and a loaf of stale bread. I was bussing tables at a dive bar in Capitol Hill when I saw him again. Caleb walked in, out of uniform, wearing a navy sweater that hugged his shoulders. He didn't see me at first, just sat at the bar, laughing with a friend. I froze, a tray of empty glasses wobbling in my hands. "Ezra," he said when he finally spotted me, his voice cutting through the bar's din. He didn't smile, but his eyes lit up, like he was genuinely glad to see me. "You staying out of trouble?" I shrugged, trying to play it cool. Trying. My voice came out rougher than I meant, and I cursed myself for it. He didn't push, just ordered a beer and tipped me more than the drink was worth. When I pocketed the cash, our fingers brushed, and I swear the air sparked. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about his eyes, the way they saw through me, and it scared the hell out of me. I'd spent years dodging feelings like this, telling myself I didn't have time for them, that they'd only make things harder. But Caleb was different. He wasn't just a cop or a do-gooder. He was someone who made me want to be better, and that was terrifying. A few days later, I ran into him again, this time at a community center in Fremont, where I'd started volunteering to keep myself busy. He was there helping run a youth program teaching kids how to box. He moved with a quiet confidence, his blonde hair catching the light as he showed a scrawny teenager how to throw a jab. When he saw me, he waved me over. "Want to spar?" he asked, tossing me a pair of gloves. I laughed, nervous, but I couldn't say no. We circled each other in the ring, the kids cheering, and for the first time in forever, I felt alive. Not just surviving, but living. He was fast, dodging my punches with a grin, and when he landed a light tap on my shoulder, he leaned in and whispered, "Not bad, pretty boy." I stumbled, not from the hit but from the way his breath grazed my ear. The kids laughed, thinking I just lost my balance, but Caleb's eyes held mine, and I knew he saw it. The flush creeping up my neck, the way my guard was slipping in more ways than one. After the session, he pulled me aside. "You're good with them," he said, nodding toward the kids. "You ever think about doing something like this? Helping people?" I snorted. "Me? I'm not exactly role model material." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You're wrong. You've got heart, Ezra. You just need someone to believe in you." I wanted to argue, to tell him I was a lost cause, but the way he looked at me, like I was worth something, shut me up. That night, we grabbed coffee at a shop near the center, and he told me about himself. Caleb, 26, had grown up in a small town outside Seattle, joined the force to make a difference, not to bust heads. He was gay, he said casually, like it was no big deal, but my heart stopped. I'd never heard someone say it so openly, so unashamed. "You ever figure that stuff out for yourself?" he asked, his tone careful but curious. I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my mouth. "I don't know." I lied, my voice barely a whisper. Truth was, I'd known for years but never had the guts to say it. Growing up, I'd heard the slurs, seen the looks. Being different wasn't safe, not where I came from. Caleb didn't push. He just nodded like he understood and changed the subject. But that question lingered, gnawing at me, forcing me to face the truth I'd been running from. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments. Coffee runs, late-night talks at Rosie's, sparring sessions that ended with us laughing, breathless, too close for comfort. Caleb was like a lighthouse, steady and bright, pulling me out of the dark. But I was still a mess, caught between wanting him and fearing what it meant to want him. One night, things got real. We were at a park near Lake Union, the city's lights shimmering on the water. We'd been joking, tossing pebbles into the lake, when Caleb turned to me, his face serious. "Ezra, what are you so afraid of?" I froze, the pebble in my hand dropping to the ground. "I'm not afraid," I said, but my voice shook. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, smell the faint cedar of his cologne. "You are," he said softly, "and that's okay, but you don't have to run forever." I wanted to kiss him. God, I wanted to, but the fear was a vice around my chest, squeezing tight. "You don't get it," I said, stepping back. "People like me, we don't get happy endings. We get kicked out, beat up, forgotten." Caleb's jaw tightened, but his eyes were soft. "That's not true. You get to choose, Ezra. You get to decide who you are." I turned away, my hands shaking. "I can't," I whispered, and I walked away, leaving him standing by the lake. I didn't look back, but I felt his gaze on me, heavy and sad. The next day I slipped. Old habits die hard, and desperation makes you stupid. I lifted a watch from a guy at a bus stop, thinking I could pawn it for rent money. But he caught me, and before I knew it, I was sprinting again, heart pounding, the past rushing back. This time, when the sirens came, I didn't get away. It was Caleb who found me, cornered in a parking lot. His face was a storm. Anger, disappointment, and something deeper, something that hurt to see. "Damn it, Ezra," he said, his voice rough. "I thought you were better than this." "I told you," I snapped, my hands cuffed behind me. "This is who I am." He didn't respond, just led me to the cruiser. The ride to the station was silent, the weight of his disappointment crushing me. At the station, he pulled me aside before booking me. "I'm not giving up on you," he said, his voice low, "but you've got to meet me halfway." I didn't answer, couldn't. They processed me, and I spent the night in a cell, staring at the ceiling, Caleb's words echoing. He was right, I had a choice, but choosing meant facing everything I'd buried, everything I was scared to admit. When I got out the next morning, Caleb was waiting outside, leaning against his car. "You're not done yet," he said, tossing me a bagel from Rosie's. "But you're on thin ice, pretty boy." I laughed, despite everything, and took the bagel. "Why do you care so much?" I asked, my voice raw. He looked at me, his eyes steady. "Because I see you, Ezra, the real you, and I'm not letting you throw that away." I started showing up at the community center more, not just for Caleb, but because it felt good to be around people who didn't judge me. The kids there, scrappy and full of attitude, reminded me of myself at their age. I taught them what I knew: how to throw a punch, how to dodge one, how to stand tall when the world tries to knock you down. Caleb was always there, watching, his smile a quiet encouragement. One evening, after the kids left, we stayed late, cleaning up the gym. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and old leather. Caleb tossed me a towel, his grin playful. "You're getting good at this," he said. "The kids love you." I shrugged, embarrassed. "They're all right." But inside I was glowing. For the first time, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. We ended up at the lake again, sitting on a bench, the city quiet around us. The silence between us was comfortable, but heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Caleb broke it. "You ever gonna tell me what's going on in that head of yours?" I looked at him, my heart pounding. "I'm scared," I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I've never let myself feel this way. Not about anyone, especially not a guy." He didn't flinch, just nodded. "It's okay to be scared," he said, "but you don't have to do it alone." I looked at the water, the way it caught the city lights, and something in me broke open. "I'm gay," I said, the words foreign and terrifying and liberating all at once. I've known for years, but I never said it. Not out loud. Caleb's hand found mine, his touch warm and steady. "Thank you for telling me," he said, his voice soft. "That took guts." I laughed, shaky. "Yeah, well, don't get used to it." He smiled, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "Too late." That night we kissed, tentative at first, then fierce, like we'd both been holding our breath for too long. It wasn't perfect, but it was real and it was ours. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. But life doesn't let you have nice things for long. A week later, I got a call from one of the kids at the center, a 15-year-old named Marcus. He was in trouble, mixed up with a crew running drugs in Belltown. I didn't think, just grabbed my jacket and went. I found him in an alley, cornered by two guys twice his size. I stepped in, my old instincts kicking in, and things got ugly fast. By the time Caleb showed up, sirens blaring, I was bruised and bleeding, but Marcus was safe. Caleb's face was a mask of worry and anger as he pulled me aside. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded. "I was thinking about the kid," I shot back. "Someone had to." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're gonna be the death of me, pretty boy." The alley fight was a wake-up call. I couldn't keep living on the edge, not if I wanted a life with Caleb. Not if I wanted to be someone the kids at the center could look up to. But change is hard, and the past has a way of clawing you back. Caleb and I grew closer, our relationship a quiet anchor in the chaos of my life. We'd steal moments, a kiss in his car, a late-night walk by the lake, his hand in mine as we watched the city sleep. But the world wasn't always kind. Whispers followed us at the precinct at the center. Some of Caleb's colleagues didn't take kindly to him being out, and I heard the slurs, saw the looks. It reminded me why I'd kept my truth buried for so long. One night it came to a head. We were at a bar in Capitol Hill, celebrating Marcus getting into a mentorship program. Some drunk guy started mouthing off, calling us names I won't repeat. I stood, ready to throw a punch, but Caleb grabbed my arm. "Don't," he said, his voice calm but firm. "He's not worth it." I listened, but it burned. Later, outside, Caleb pulled me close. "You can't fight every battle," he said, "but you can choose the ones that matter." He was right. The real fight was inside me, learning to love myself, to believe I deserved the life I was starting to build. I enrolled in community college, studying social work, inspired by Caleb and the kids at the center. It wasn't easy. Nights were long, money was tight, but Caleb was there, cheering me on, calling me pretty boy when I doubted myself. The final choice came a year after that first night in the alley. Marcus got in trouble again, caught up with the same crew. This time, I didn't run in fists first. I called Caleb, and we worked together, me talking Marcus down, Caleb handling the cops. When it was over, Marcus hugged me, tears in his eyes. "You saved me," he said. I looked at Caleb, his face lit by the streetlights, and realized he'd saved me too. Not just from a cell, but from a life of running. "I choose you," I told him later, by the lake, our lake. "Every day, I choose you." He smiled, pulling me close. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere, pretty boy." And as we stood there, the city humming around us, I knew I'd finally stopped running. I'd chosen love, chosen myself, chosen a future I never thought I could have. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and it was enough.